After another great night under the stars, we were busy packing up and getting ready for another big day on the road. Tracks like the Tanami, you won't find a lot of designated camping areas, so it's up to you to find a spot to spend the night. What I'd ask you to do is to be respectful to the landowners around here and just have a chat with them if you happen to see them. And if you don't, pull up and make sure you leave the place as you found it. Make sure your fire's out, there's no rubbish laying around, and don't leave any marks of where you've been. Now what we do is probably along the lines of what used to be the old country code, which was burn, bash and bury. Now we don't bury anymore, it's bad for the environment. But any tins that you use, throw them in the fire for a while, it'll burn all the juice out of them, pull them out, they become easier to crush up, which means your bag of rubbish is smaller than if the cans were in their full shape. And guess what? At the other end, you haven't got a heap of bags full of maggots to get rid of. Once we were all packed up, we were back on the road ready for another big day of driving. Something about drives like this in Australia that just remind me why I come out here. The freedom that you will experience driving these sorts of tracks, you won't find anywhere else in Australia. I'm coming back. A track like this, it's not like going for a Sunday drive. You do have to put your head around it before you come out. Think about the things that you may need. Without carrying too much gear, of course, that's always the balancing act. Everything you bring out weighs something and takes up a space. So we've got to be conscious that we don't bring too much, but things like a first aid kit. Now, you are a long way from everywhere out here, and just your standard first aid kit that fits behind the seat's probably not quite good enough. So think a little bit broader about it, perhaps even talk to a nurse or a doctor you may know. Tell them where you're coming and ask them what they think you should bring out here, because the little things that happen on a day-to-day basis at home are dealt with quite easily, but out here they can turn into big things quite quickly, so make sure you bring a bit of gear to look after yourself health-wise. It's also important to stop on the side of the road every now and then. Not only is it a good stretch of the legs, but it's also a good time to check out your car and caravan.
When you're towing a caravan on these sorts of rough dirt roads, a good habit to get into is every time you pull up, get out and check your wheel bearings and your tyres aren't getting too hot. Best way to do that is to start with the back of your hand, touch the tyre. And if it's getting pretty hot there, you know there's not quite enough air in there, so you throw a bit of more air into it and check it again a bit later. As you work your way down, you can work your way towards the wheel bearing. Now be careful, because if it is hot, it's going to burn you, and that's why I say to do it with the back of your hand and not the front. With the front of your hand, your natural reaction if it's pretty hot is to grab it, and that's the last thing you want to do. You'll end up with burns on your hand, so touch it slowly in there and make sure it's not getting too warm. It's a good idea on tracks like this to stop regularly and just make sure nothing's come loose or come open. Now, I've got to tell you, a couple of minutes ago, I hit a bull dust hole of biblical proportions and probably came as close as I've ever been to losing a caravan. Don't worry, George, everything's all right. But I do want to have a quick look inside and make sure not everything's strewn about. I've done all right. A few dirty clothes scattered on the floor and the cushions come off the lounge, but other than that, we're good to go. I'll just go and make sure everything else is all right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, but it doesn't bring us to the end of the journey, because next week we'll be making our way through to Fitzroy Crossing. It's all been brought to you thanks to our good mates at Lotus Caravans. So I'll catch you next time. Jump in for a drive as we show you what's up down under.
What's up down under?